The white dress felt like a prison. Clara Whitfield stood at the altar, hands trembling around a bouquet of peonies that suddenly weighed more than her future. The church was packed, 300 guests in designer suits and borrowed judgment, all waiting for a fairy tale that was about to shatter into a nightmare. Silas was late, 20 minutes late. The pianist had cycled through the same classical pieces twice, and the whispers had evolved from concerned murmurs to barely concealed gossip. Clara's mother sat in the front pew, her painted smile cracking at the edges. Her father refused to make eye contact, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle twitching from across the room. Then the doors opened. Silas Grant walked in, tall, devastating in his tailored tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled. The heir to Grant Holdings, the man who'd promised her forever over candlelit dinners and weekend getaways to his family's lake house. The man she'd trusted with every vulnerable corner of her heart. But something was wrong. He wasn't walking toward her. He was walking toward someone else. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. Clara's vision tunneled as Silas stopped beside a woman in the third row. Lydia Moreau, the sultry PR executive with red lips and a reputation for destroying marriages before they even started. She rose from her seat like a queen claiming her throne, and the church erupted into chaos. I can't do this, Silas announced, his voice cutting through the confusion like a blade through silk. The priest froze mid-gesture, his Bible hanging open like a broken promise. Someone's phone camera flashed. Another gasped. Clara heard her mother's sharp intake of breath, the sound of a woman watching her daughter's life implode in real time. Silas. Clara's voice came out small, unfamiliar. Not the confident interior designer who'd presented to Fortune 500 boardrooms. Not the woman who'd planned every detail of this day, down to the shade of ivory on the napkins. This was the voice of a girl realizing she'd been a fool. He finally looked at her. His eyes held something that made her stomach drop. Not regret, not even guilt. Pity. I'm sorry, Clara. I thought I could go through with it. But I can't marry someone I don't love. The words landed like physical blows, each one calculated, surgical in its cruelty. He'd rehearsed this, probably in Lydia's bed, between stolen kisses and promises that belonged to someone else. You don't love me? Clara repeated, and she hated how pathetic it sounded, how small she'd become in the space of 30 seconds. I love her, Silas said, reaching for Lydia's hand. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. This way, as if there was a better way to destroy someone, as if humiliation had a preferred method. Clara's fingers went numb. The bouquet slipped from her grasp, peonies scattering across the altar like casualties of war. Someone was crying. She thought it might be her maid of honor, Jessica, but the sound felt distant, like it was happening to someone else in some other universe where betrayal wasn't supposed to taste this bitter. The church had gone silent, except for the whispers. Those terrible, hungry whispers that fed on scandal and suffering. Clara could feel 300 pairs of eyes on her, watching her face for the breakdown they gossiped about for months. Years. Her father stood abruptly, his face red with rage and shame. He walked out without a word, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. Her mother followed, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief that probably cost more than most people's wedding dresses. Clara stood alone at the altar. Silas and Lydia were already moving toward the exit, his hand on the small of her back in a gesture that was achingly familiar. That was supposed to be Clara's gesture, her wedding, her future. But apparently, it had never been hers at all. She forced her legs to move, one foot in front of the other, walking down an aisle that should have led to happiness but instead felt like a gauntlet of shame. The veil obscured her vision, thank God, so she couldn't see their faces clearly, couldn't watch them dissect her pain with their judgment and their thinly veiled satisfaction. Some people loved watching others fall. It made their own mediocre lives feel less empty. As she passed Silas and Lydia near the exit, Clara stopped. Something inside her, pride, maybe, or the last shred of dignity she had left, refused to let this moment end without words. She lifted her veil slowly, meeting Silas's eyes with a steadiness that surprised even her. I hope your heaven was worth my hell." Her voice didn't shake, didn't break. It was cold, detached, the voice of someone already becoming a stranger to her own grief. Then she walked out into the blinding sunlight, still wearing her wedding dress, still carrying the weight of a future that had evaporated like morning fog. Behind her, she heard Lydia laugh, sharp, victorious, cruel. And Clara Whitfield made a promise to herself in that moment, standing on the church steps in a dress that cost $12,000 and dreams that had cost so much more. They would regret this. Not today, maybe not even this year, but eventually, inevitably, they would understand exactly what they'd thrown away. What would you do if the person you trusted most destroyed you in front of everyone you knew? Would you fight back or disappear forever? 6 months after the wedding that never happened, Clara discovered that humiliation had a long shelf life. The Instagram posts wouldn't stop. Silas and Lydia at charity galas, Silas and Lydia on yachts, Silas and Lydia living the life that was supposed to be Clara's. The comments underneath were worse. Strangers picking apart what Clara had done wrong, why she wasn't enough, how she should have seen it coming. She deleted social media entirely, but the damage was already done. Her interior design clients disappeared one by one. Apparently, being publicly humiliated made you a liability in high society. The Rothschilds canceled their penthouse project. The Vanderbilts went with someone else. Even her best friend from college stopped returning calls, as if heartbreak was contagious. Clara spent most days in her small apartment, staring at walls she couldn't afford to decorate anymore. The irony wasn't lost on her. An interior designer living in a space that felt like a tomb. Then her mother called. "Your father's had a heart attack." The words came through the phone like bullets through glass. Clara dropped everything and drove to the hospital, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. She'd barely spoken to her parents since the wedding. The shame had built walls between them that nobody knew how to climb. She arrived too late. Her father was already gone. The doctor said something about cardiac arrest, stress, underlying conditions. But Clara knew the truth. He'd died of embarrassment. His only daughter, left at the altar in front of everyone who mattered. It had killed him slowly, invisibly, until his heart just gave up. At the funeral, her mother wore black and silence in equal measure. 20 people showed up. For a man who'd once commanded rooms full of investors and dreamers, 20 people was an insult. After everyone left, Clara's mother handed her an envelope. "He wanted you to have this. It's all that's left." Inside was a deed to a warehouse in the industrial district. Nothing else. No money, no apology, no explanation. Just a building nobody wanted in a neighborhood everyone avoided. That night, Clara drove to the warehouse in the rain. The kind of rain that felt personal, like the sky was crying on her behalf. The building looked worse than she'd imagined. Broken windows, rusted doors, graffiti covering walls that had once held her father's ambitions. She forced the door open and stepped inside. Water dripped from holes in the ceiling, creating puddles on the concrete floor. The space smelled like rot and forgotten dreams. This was her inheritance. This was what her life had become. She almost left, almost gave up entirely. But then she saw it, a metal desk in the corner covered in dust and debris. On top of it, a leather notebook. Her father's handwriting covered every page. Blueprints, sketches, architectural designs for buildings that never got built. Projects that died when his investors pulled out, when his reputation crumbled along with his health. On the last page, a letter. "Clara, they took everything from me when the market crashed. My reputation, my savings, my pride. I know you're angry that I left you nothing but this broken place. But maybe broken is just another word for unfinished. They can take your money, your status, your dignity. But they can't take what you build with your own hands. Start here. Finish what I couldn't. Show them that Whitfield still means something. I love you. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. Now you have to be." Clara read it 3 times, tears mixing with rainwater on her face. Her father hadn't abandoned her. He'd given her the only thing he had left, a chance to rebuild from the ground up. She looked around the warehouse with new eyes. The space was massive, easily 10,000 square feet. High ceilings, Good bones, natural light from the broken skylights. It was a disaster, yes, but it was also a blank canvas. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found a name she hadn't called in years. Ethan Price. He'd been her father's business partner once, before everything fell apart. A quiet man who'd always treated her with respect, who'd sent flowers after the wedding disaster with a simple note. "You deserved better." The phone rang 4 times. She almost hung up. "Clara." His voice was surprised but warm. "Is everything okay?" "I need help," she said, and the words felt like jumping off a cliff without knowing if there was water below. "I have a building and a plan, but no money and no credibility. I know it's asking a lot. Where are you?" She gave him the address. He showed up 30 minutes later, still wearing his suit from whatever meeting he'd left. He walked through the warehouse without speaking, his footsteps echoing in the empty space. Clara held her breath, waiting for him to tell her this was impossible, that she was crazy, that she should just sell the property and move on with her life. Instead, he turned to her and smiled. "Your father showed me the designs for this place years ago. He called it his masterpiece." Clara's throat tightened. "It's just a warehouse." "No," Ethan said, running his hand along a support beam. "It's a second chance. Let's get to work." Can a broken building really become an empire? Or was Clara just trading one impossible dream for another? 3 years of bleeding hands and sleepless nights changed everything. Clara learned to swing a hammer before dawn and negotiate with contractors by noon. She learned that pride was expensive and patience was currency. She learned that building something real required more than money. It required becoming someone new entirely. The warehouse transformed slowly, painfully, like a butterfly fighting its way out of a cocoon that didn't want to let go. Ethan had invested $200,000 of his own money, but he never made Clara feel like she owed him anything except her best work. He showed up every Saturday to help paint walls and install fixtures, his expensive suits replaced by jeans and work boots. "Why are you doing this?" Clara asked him one night as they sat on the floor eating Chinese takeout, surrounded by paint cans and blueprints. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "Your father saved my life once. Not literally, but close enough. When my startup failed and I wanted to give up, he told me something I never forgot. He said, 'The world doesn't care about your first attempt. It only remembers your last one.'" Clara felt something shift in her chest. Not quite attraction, not yet, but recognition. Here was someone who understood that failure wasn't the end of the story. It was just a chapter before the comeback. Whitfield Atelier opened on a Tuesday in October, 3 years and 2 months after the worst day of Clara's life. The launch was small, just a website, a few social media posts, and one contract with a boutique hotel in Portland that was willing to take a chance on an unknown designer. Clara's design philosophy was simple. Spaces should feel like healing. Every room she created had natural light, soft textures, colors that calmed rather than overwhelmed. She designed for people who'd been broken because she knew exactly what they needed, proof that beautiful things could rise from ruins. The Portland Hotel project went viral, not because of the design itself, but because of the story. A lifestyle blogger discovered that Clara Whitfield was the same woman who'd been left at the altar by Silas Grant. She wrote a piece titled "From Jilted Bride to Design Maven: How Clara Whitfield Turned Heartbreak into Art." The article was shared 50,000 times in a week. Suddenly, everyone wanted a piece of Clara's redemption story. Vogue featured her in their Women Who Inspire section. Architectural Digest called her the most exciting new voice in luxury design. Elite hotels from New York to Los Angeles reached out, begging for her to transform their spaces. But Clara stayed careful. She turned down more projects than she accepted, choosing only clients who understood her vision. Quality over quantity. Integrity over profit. The opposite of everything Silas represented. She moved out of her tiny apartment and into a loft above the atelier. Minimalist, elegant, filled with light. At night, she'd stand at the window overlooking the city and think about how far she'd come. From a woman in a wedding dress to a woman with an empire. From broken to building. Her father's grave became her boardroom. Every major decision, she'd visit and talk to him like he could still hear. "We got the contract with the Belmont chain," she'd say. Or, "They want me to speak at the design summit in Milan." She'd trace his name on the headstone and whisper, "I finished what you started." The only thing missing was romance. Men asked her out constantly. Investors, clients, even a famous architect who sent roses every week for 2 months. She turned them all down politely but firmly. Her heart was still a construction zone, nowhere near ready for occupancy. Except Ethan never asked. He just showed up for coffee on Monday mornings, for strategy sessions on Thursday nights, for celebrations when they landed new contracts and consolation when deals fell through. He never pushed, never demanded more than she was willing to give. He just existed in her orbit like gravity, constant, steady, essential. One evening, they were reviewing designs for a luxury resort in Aspen when Clara noticed the way lamplight caught his profile. Strong jaw, kind eyes, hands that had helped her rebuild literally and figuratively. When had he become handsome? When had his presence started feeling like home? "You're staring," Ethan said without looking up from the blueprints. Clara blushed, caught. "Just thinking about how I never thanked you properly." He finally looked at her, his expression unreadable. "You thank me every day. Every time you succeed, that's thanks enough." But it wasn't. Clara knew it wasn't. There was something unspoken growing between them, something patient and terrifying. She wasn't ready to name it yet. Maybe she never would be. Then came the invitation. Thick cream cardstock, embossed lettering, her name spelled out in elegant script. The annual philanthropic gala at the Grand Celestial Hotel. It was the event of the season. Every major player in business and society would be there, including Silas Grant and Lydia Moreau. Clara held the invitation for a long time, her hand steady but her heart racing. 3 years ago, she would have burned it. 3 years ago, seeing them would have destroyed her all over again. But Clara wasn't the same woman who'd walk down that aisle alone. She called her stylist. "I need a dress. White, stunning. The kind that stops conversations." Because if she was going to face her past, she was going to do it looking like the future. Would Clara's comeback be complete when she walked into that ballroom? Or was she about to discover that some wounds never fully heal? The Grand Celestial Hotel glittered like a diamond on fire. Clara arrived alone, which was a choice. Ethan had offered to be her date, but she declined gently. This moment needed to be hers. No armor, no safety net. Just Clara Whitfield walking back into the world that had spit her out. Her dress was white silk that moved like water, cut to perfection by a designer who understood that elegance was a weapon when wielded correctly. Her hair was swept up, exposing the graceful line of her neck. She wore no jewelry except small diamond earrings, her only remaining piece from her mother, given before everything fell apart. She looked like a ghost and a goddess at the same time. Exactly the effect she wanted. The ballroom was packed with people who'd watched her humiliation 3 years ago. Some had been at the wedding. Others had just seen the photos that circulated online like wildfire. Their eyes tracked her entrance with recognition and something else. Surprise? Respect? Maybe both. Clara moved through the crowd like she owned the space. Because in a way, she did. Whitfield Atelier had designed the hotel's executive suites just last year. Her work was literally in the walls around them. She was accepting a glass of champagne from a waiter when she saw them. Silas and Lydia, standing near the silent auction tables. They looked different, older somehow, tired. Silas's suit was expensive but slightly outdated. Last season's cut, if you knew how to look. Lydia's dress was beautiful but desperate, trying too hard to reclaim glory that was already fading. Clara had kept loose tabs on them through industry gossip. Grant Holdings was struggling. Lydia had made some catastrophic PR decisions that cost them major clients. They were still wealthy, sure, but the trajectory was downward. Gravity always wins eventually. Silas saw her first. His champagne glass paused halfway to his lips, his face going pale like he'd seen a ghost. Which, in a way, he had. The ghost of the girl he'd destroyed, now reborn as the woman he could never have. Lydia followed his gaze, and her expression went cold. Clara recognized that look, jealousy mixed with rage, the face of someone realizing they'd bet on the wrong horse. Clara didn't approach them. She didn't need to. She simply existed in the space, laughing with a tech billionaire here, discussing architecture with a hotel mogul there. Being successful, being powerful, being everything they'd assumed she could never be without Silas Grant's name attached to hers. 2 hours into the evening, Silas approached her. "Clara." His voice was tentative, like he was testing thin ice. "You look incredible." She turned slowly, her expression polite but distant. "Silas, still attending events you probably can't afford." The barb landed perfectly. His jaw tightened. "I deserve that. You deserve much worse. But I'm not in the business of giving people what they deserve anymore. I'm in the business of building beautiful things." She glanced past him toward Lydia, who was watching them with predatory focus. "How's that going for you?" Silas had the decency to look ashamed. "Not well. I made mistakes." "You made choices," Clara corrected. "There's a difference." Before he could respond, another man joined them. Richard Chun, CEO of Pacific Hospitality Group, one of the biggest hotel chains in the country. Clara had been courting his business for 6 months. "Ms. Whitfield," Richard said warmly, completely ignoring Silas. "I've been trying to find you all evening. My board reviewed your proposal for the Singapore property. We'd like to move forward." Clara's heart skipped, but her face remained perfectly composed. The Singapore contract was worth $15 million. It would make Whitfield Atelier a major player, not just a rising star. "That's wonderful news, Richard. Let's schedule a meeting next week to discuss details." "Perfect. Oh, and I heard you might be looking for investment properties. There's a hotel in the city that's about to go on the market. Financial troubles. The owner might be motivated to sell quickly." Richard glanced at Silas with thinly veiled disdain. "Grant Holdings property, actually. The Celestial Gardens Hotel. Beautiful building, terrible management." Clara's breath caught. The Celestial Gardens Hotel. The venue where her wedding reception was supposed to be held. The place where Silas and Lydia had planned to celebrate after destroying her life. Silas looked like he'd been punched. "Richard, we're not selling." "You will be," Richard said bluntly. "Your debt is public knowledge, Silas. It's only a matter of time." He turned back to Clara. "Just thought you might be interested. The building has good bones. Could be spectacular with the right vision." He walked away, leaving Clara and Silas in loaded silence. "Don't," Silas said quietly, desperately. "Clara, please. That hotel is all we have left." Clara studied him. This man who'd once been her entire world. He looked small now. Not physically, but in every way that mattered. She felt nothing for him. Not hatred, not pity, not even satisfaction. Just a profound emptiness where love used to live. 3 years ago, you took everything from me in front of everyone I knew," Claire said softly. "You humiliated me, destroyed my reputation, and walked away without looking back. Now you're asking me for mercy. I'm asking you not to become like me," Silas said, his voice cracking. Claire smiled, not cruel, just sad. "I could never become like you, Silas, because I know what it feels like to lose everything. And that knowledge makes you either a monster or a builder." She paused, letting the weight settle. "You chose monster. You chose different." She turned to leave, but Silas grabbed her arm gently. "Clara, wait. I need to talk to you. About a loan, about an investment opportunity. Please, let me send you the details." Clara looked down at his hand on her arm, the same hand that had let go of hers at the altar. She pulled away slowly. "Send the proposal to my office. I'll review it." His face lit up with desperate hope. "Thank you. Thank you, Clara." "Don't thank me yet," she said. "I'm a businesswoman, Silas, not a charity." She walked away, her white dress flowing behind her like a flag of surrender that actually meant victory. Was Clara really considering helping the man who destroyed her, or was she planning something much more calculated? The proposal arrived 3 days later, delivered by courier in a leather portfolio that probably cost more than it should have given Grant Holdings' financial situation. Clara read it alone in her office, rain drumming against the windows like an audience waiting for a performance. The numbers were worse than she'd imagined. Silas and Lydia had burned through their capital with reckless investments and lavish spending. The Celestial Gardens Hotel was hemorrhaging money, and they were leveraged to the point of drowning. They needed $5 million to stay afloat. In return, they were offering 20% equity in the hotel. It was a terrible deal. Any smart investor would walk away. But Clara wasn't thinking like an investor. She was thinking like an architect, someone who understood that the most important foundations were the ones you built inside yourself. Ethan knocked on her office door, carrying 2 cups of coffee like he always did when he knew she was wrestling with something difficult. "You're actually considering this," he said. "Not a question." "I'm considering what it means," Clara replied, accepting the coffee. 3 years ago, I was powerless. Now I have the power to destroy them or save them. That's not a small thing. Ethan sat across from her, his expression concerned. "Don't let vengeance wear your crown, Clara. You've built something beautiful. Don't let them poison it." "It's not vengeance I'm after," Clara said quietly. "It's closure." She made a call, not to Silas, but to a private investigator she'd used before for background checks on business partners. "I need everything on Grant Holdings. Financial records, legal issues, scandals, affairs, all of it. And I need it in 48 hours. The information came back damning. Lydia had been embezzling money to fund her luxury shopping habits. Silas had known, but covered it up, because admitting his mistress was a thief would have been too humiliating. They were both guilty, both complicit, both drowning in consequences they'd built with their own hands. Claire scheduled a meeting. Not at her office. That would have given her too much advantage. Instead, she chose a small cafe in the arts district, neutral territory where vulnerability had nowhere to hide. Silas arrived alone. He looked thinner, older, like the weight of failure had carved years into his face. "Where's Lydia?" Clara asked, stirring her tea. "She thought it would be better if I came alone. Less complicated. Less embarrassing, you mean," Clara said. "She's afraid to face me." Silas didn't deny it. He folded his hands on the table like a penitent at confession. "Clara, I need to say this before we talk business. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, and I know it doesn't change anything. But I was a coward. You deserved a king, and I was just a boy playing dress-up." The words were almost identical to what she'd imagined him saying in her fantasies of revenge. But hearing them in reality felt different. Hollow almost. Like watching a script being read by someone who didn't understand the story. "And boys always chase glitter before gold," Clara finished softly. "I know. I've had 3 years to figure that out." They sat in silence, the cafe bustling around them, with people who had no idea they were witnessing a reckoning. "I read your proposal," Clara said finally. "It's a bad deal." Silas's face fell. "Clara, please. Let me finish." She pulled out a folder from her bag, sliding it across the table. "I'm not interested in 20% of a failing hotel, but I am interested in the property itself." Silas opened the folder. His hands started shaking as he read. Clara had drafted a different deal entirely. She would provide the $5 million they needed, but in exchange, Silas would sign over full ownership of the Celestial Gardens Hotel. "You're taking it all," Silas whispered. "I'm buying it," Clara corrected, "for more than it's worth in its current condition. You and Lydia walk away with enough money to pay your debts and start over. Clean slate. But the hotel was my grandfather's, and you ran it into the ground," Clara said, her voice gentle but firm. "You can keep something you're destroying, or you can let it go to someone who'll make it beautiful again. Your choice." Silas looked at her with eyes that finally understood what he'd lost. Not the hotel. Her. The woman who would have stood by him through anything, who would have built empires with him instead of watching him burn them down. "This is your revenge," he said quietly. "No, Clara de Plaith. Revenge would be watching you lose everything publicly. This is me giving you a way out with dignity. That's more than you gave me." The truth of it settled between them like morning frost. Silas signed the papers with shaking hands. Clara watched, feeling something she didn't expect. Not triumph, not satisfaction. Just a profound sense of completing a circle that had been broken for too long. "For what it's worth," Silas said as he prepared to leave, "you became everything I thought I wanted. Successful, powerful, untouchable. Lydia and I are falling apart. She blames me for everything. I blame myself. Good, Clara said simply. That means you're finally growing up. After he left, Clara sat alone with the signed documents that made her the owner of the building where her life had once been scheduled to begin. The place that was supposed to hold her wedding reception now belonged to her completely. She pulled out her phone and called Ethan. It's done, she said. I own the Celestial Gardens. How do you feel? He asked. Clara looked out the cafe window at people rushing through rain, all of them carrying their own stories of heartbreak and healing. Like I finally finished a chapter I've been writing for 3 years. Good. Now come back to the office. We have a hotel to redesign. Clara smiled. We? This is my project. Everything you do is our project, Clara. You know that. And she didn't know that. Ethan had been there from the beginning, quietly building beside her, never asking for credit or recognition, just being the foundation when everything else was unstable. Maybe that's what love actually looked like. Not fireworks and grand gestures, just someone showing up day after day, helping you build something worth keeping. Clara now owned the building where she was once humiliated, but would transforming it heal her completely, or was there still one final piece missing? The Celestial Gardens Hotel sat empty for 2 weeks before Clara walked through its doors as the owner. She came alone at dawn, when the city was still sleeping and the building felt like it was holding its breath. The grand lobby echoed with her footsteps, each one a reminder that she'd walked these halls once before, young, naive, planning a wedding reception that never happened. The ballroom where her reception was supposed to be held was exactly as she remembered. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt haunted by the ghost of who she used to be. Clara stood in the center of the empty ballroom and did something she hadn't allowed herself to do in 3 years. She cried, not the desperate, broken sobs of fresh heartbreak. These were quiet tears of release, the kind that come when you finally realize you've been carrying weight that was never yours to hold. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. You okay? You've been gone for 2 hours. She typed back. I'm perfect. Just saying goodbye to someone I used to know. The redesign took 6 months. Clara poured everything she'd learned into that building. She stripped away the outdated gold fixtures and heavy drapery, replacing them with clean lines, natural materials, soft colors that felt like breathing after holding your breath underwater. Every room became a meditation on healing, spaces designed not to impress, but to restore. She renamed it the White Room, not just because of the color palette, but because white was what she'd worn both on her worst day and her best one. It represented both surrender and victory, depending on who was wearing it. The hotel's signature suite became her masterpiece. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a private terrace with gardens she designed herself, artwork from local artists who'd survived their own kinds of destruction. She called it the Phoenix Suite, and it was never available because it stayed booked solid 2 years in advance. During construction, Clara visited her father's grave more than usual. I finished it, Dad, she'd say, sitting cross-legged on the grass beside his headstone. The hotel is everything you would have wanted, everything I needed it to be. She'd trace his name with her fingers. I wish you could see it. I wish you could see me now. But maybe he could. Maybe that was the whole point of building something beautiful. It became proof that you existed, that you mattered, that you turned pain into purpose. Ethan showed up to the construction site every morning with coffee and encouragement. He never mentioned the way Clara's hand would linger on his when she took the cup, or how their conversations had started lasting longer, getting softer, touching on topics that had nothing to do with business. One evening, they were reviewing fabric samples when Ethan said something that changed everything. You know I'm in love with you, right? Clara's hand froze over a swatch of cream linen. Her heart did something complicated her chest. Part panic, part relief, part fear that loving someone again meant giving them the power to destroy you. Ethan, you don't have to say anything, he interrupted gently. I just needed you to know. I've been in love with you since the day you showed me your father's notebook and decided to build instead of breaking. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just being honest. Clara looked at him. This man who'd shown up for her when she had nothing, who'd invested in her when she was a liability, who'd never once asked for more than she was ready to give. He loved her quietly, patiently, the way gardeners love seeds they plant in winter, knowing spring is still months away. I'm terrified, she admitted. I know. I don't know if I can survive being hurt like that again. You can, Ethan said. But you won't have to. I'm not him, Clara. I never will be. She believed him. Not because he promised, but because he'd already proven it through 3 years of showing up without asking for credit. Ask me again when the hotel opens, Clara said softly. When I've finally finished this chapter. Ethan smiled. I'll wait as long as you need. And that's when Clara knew. Real love doesn't rush. It doesn't demand. It just exists beside you, steady as sunrise, waiting for you to be ready to step into the light. The opening of the White Room was scheduled for a Friday in May. Invitations went out to everyone who mattered in the design and hospitality world. Clara personally addressed one to Silas Grant, knowing he probably wouldn't come, but needing to send it anyway. Closure required witnesses. 3 days before the opening, Clara received a package. No return address, just her name written in handwriting she recognized immediately. Inside was a letter from Lydia Moreau. Clara, you won. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to say this. I destroyed your life because I was jealous of what you had. Not Silas, but the way he looked at you like you were everything. Nobody ever looked at me like that. They looked at my body, my scandals, my drama, but never at me. I thought stealing him would make me feel whole. Instead, it just made me empty. You built an empire from your pain. I just became someone I don't recognize. I'm sorry, not because I think it matters to you, but because I need to own what I did. You deserve better. He deserved better. I deserved better than myself. Clara read the letter twice. It didn't change anything. Lydia's regret couldn't undo the humiliation, couldn't bring back the Clara who'd stood at that altar believing in forever. But it was something, an acknowledgement that even villains in other people's stories are just broken people in their own. She filed the letter away and didn't respond. Some apologies don't need acceptance. They just need to be said. The night before the opening, Clara couldn't sleep. She walked through the White Room alone, turning on lights, checking details, making sure everything was perfect. In the Phoenix suite, she stood at the window watching the city sleep below her. This building had been meant to hold her wedding reception. Instead, it became the monument to everything she'd built from the ashes of that day. Tomorrow, the world would see it. Tomorrow, everyone who'd watched her humiliation would witness her resurrection. Tomorrow, she'd finally prove that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming so undeniably yourself that your existence becomes poetry. With the grand opening of the White Room, finally closed the chapter on Clara's past, or was there still one more surprise waiting in the wings? The White Room opened its doors at 7 p.m., and Clara almost didn't recognize herself in the mirror. She wore white again, not a wedding dress this time, but a sleek pantsuit that made her look like she owned the world, which in a way she did, at least this corner of it. Her hair fell in waves past her shoulders, and she'd chosen minimal jewelry. She didn't need decoration. Success was accessory enough. The lobby filled quickly. Industry titans, design legends, society pages come to life. Everyone who'd whispered about her failure was now here to witness her triumph. The irony was delicious. Richard Chun arrived first, bringing his entire executive board. Clara, this is stunning. Absolutely stunning. The Phoenix Suite is already getting requests from heads of state. Magazine editors circulated with photographers, capturing every angle. A reporter from Architectural Digest cornered her near the champagne fountain. Ms. Whitfield, this building has quite a history for you personally. How does it feel to transform the place where you were supposed to celebrate your wedding into your greatest professional achievement? Clara smiled, the kind of smile that held secrets. It feels like coming home to a house you never actually lived in. This building was always meant to be mine. It just took a detour getting here. The reporter loved that. Clara could already see the headline. Ethan appeared at her elbow, looking devastating in a tailored suit. You did it, he said quietly, just for her. This is incredible. We did it, Clara corrected. I couldn't have built any of this without you. He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Clara. Later, she promised, squeezing his hand. After the speeches. After the photos. After everyone leaves. Ask me then. His eyes lit with understanding. He nodded and stepped back. Let her have this moment fully. The speeches began at 8. Richard Chun talked about the future of luxury hospitality. A famous interior designer praised Clara's vision. Then the hotel manager handed Clara the microphone, and the room fell silent. Clara stood on the stage where a band was supposed to play at her wedding reception. The cosmic joke wasn't lost on her. 3 years ago, I was supposed to be in this building celebrating the beginning of my life with someone I loved, Clara began, her voice steady. Instead, I spent the next 3 years learning that sometimes the life you planned isn't the life you needed. She could see faces in the crowd, some sympathetic, some curious, some uncomfortable with her honesty. This hotel was built in 1952 by a man who believed beautiful spaces could heal broken people. I bought this building because I was one of those broken people. And in redesigning every room, every hallway, every corner, I redesigned myself. She paused, gathering courage. The White Room isn't just a hotel. It's proof that you can take the worst moments of your life and turn them into monuments of who you became because of them, not in spite of them. The applause started slowly, then built like a wave. Clara saw tears on some faces, recognition on others. This wasn't just her story anymore. It was theirs too. As she stepped off the stage, Clara saw him. Silas Grant, standing in the back of the room, half hidden by a pillar. He'd come after all. Lydia wasn't with him. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, wearing a suit that hung slightly loose like he'd lost weight from stress. Their eyes met across the crowded room. Clara felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, not even pity. Just a neutral acknowledgement that he existed in her past but held no power in her present. She didn't approach him. Didn't need to. The building around them said everything that needed to be said. Instead, she found Ethan on the terrace, looking out at the city lights spread below like fallen stars. "You left your own party," he said without turning around. "It's not a party. It's a graduation." Clara stood beside him, close enough to feel his warmth. "I'm done with that chapter. Finally, completely done. So what comes next?" Clara turned to face him, her heart pounding in a way that felt different from fear. This felt like jumping without looking down, trusting the fall would be worth it. "You asked me earlier if I was ready. I wasn't. But standing in that ballroom just now, telling my story in front of everyone who watched me break, I realized something." She took his hand. "I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not the woman who was left at the altar. I'm not even the woman who built this hotel. I'm whoever I decide to be next. And I'd like to decide that with you." Ethan's expression shifted through surprise, hope, joy. "Clara, ask me," she whispered. "Ask me what you wanted to ask me 3 years ago when you first started showing up with coffee and refusing to let me fail alone." Ethan cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle but sure. "Clara Whitfield, will you let me love you? Not the version of you that you think you need to be, but exactly who you are right now, in this moment." Clara felt tears slip down her cheeks, but they were different from all the ones before. These were relief. Release. The kind of crying that happens when you finally let yourself be happy. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will." He kissed her then, and it was nothing like the kisses she'd shared with Silas. Those had been performance, passion without depth. This kiss was foundation. It was coming home. It was choosing someone who'd already chosen you when you had nothing to offer except broken pieces and stubborn hope. Below them, the party continued. Above them, the city glittered. And between them, something new began. Not a love story built on fairy tales and illusions, but one built on patience, respect, and the kind of strength that only comes from surviving your own destruction. When they finally pulled apart, Clara laughed. The kind of genuine, unguarded laughter she hadn't allowed herself in years. "What?" Ethan asked, smiling. "I was just thinking. 3 years ago, I thought my life was ending. Turns out it was just the intermission before the good part." Ethan pulled her close. "The good part is just getting started." Clara had rebuilt her life, reclaimed her power, and found love again. But was there still one more ghost from her past that needed confronting? Morning came softly to the white room, like a secret being whispered to someone finally ready to hear it. Clara woke in Ethan's arms in the Phoenix suite, sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked the city she'd conquered without firing a single shot. Everything felt different now, lighter, like she'd been carrying invisible chains for 3 years, and someone had finally cut them loose. "Good morning, Empire Builder," Ethan murmured, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. Clara turned to face him, marveling at how natural this felt. "How right. Good morning, patient investor." They had breakfast on the terrace, croissants and coffee, and the comfortable silence of two people who didn't need to fill every moment with words. Below them, the city was waking up. Somewhere in that sprawl of buildings and ambition, Silas was probably waking up too, wondering how his life had gotten so small while hers had expanded beyond measure. Clara's phone buzzed. A text from her mother, something rare enough to be notable. "Saw the coverage in the Times. Your father would be proud. I am too. Love, Mom." Simple words, but they cracked something open in Clara's chest. Her mother had barely spoken to her after the wedding disaster, too consumed by her own shame to see her daughter's pain. This was a bridge being rebuilt, one text at a time. "Everything okay?" Ethan asked, noticing her expression. "Yeah, just proof that even the coldest winters eventually thaw." Clara set down her phone. "I need to do something today. Something I should have done a long time ago." An hour later, Clara stood in front of her father's grave wearing jeans and a sweater, looking more like herself than she had in any ballroom or boardroom. "Hey, Dad." She sat down on the grass, not caring about stains. "I brought someone I want you to meet." Ethan stood a respectful distance away, giving her space but staying close enough to matter. "His name is Ethan. You knew him, actually. Your old business partner. He's been helping me build everything. And before you ask, yes, I love him. Not the desperate, clinging kind of love I had before. The solid kind. The kind that doesn't need fairy tales to survive." A breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of jasmine from somewhere nearby. "The White Room opened last night. It's perfect, Dad. Everything you dreamed about. I wish you could have been there. I wish you could have seen what we built from that broken warehouse you left me." Clara's voice cracked slightly. "I used to be angry that you didn't leave me money or connections. But you left me something better, proof that you can start over from nothing and build something that matters." She traced his name on the headstone one more time. "I'm happy now. Finally. Completely. And I know that wherever you are, you're celebrating with me. So this isn't goodbye. This is thank you. For the warehouse. For the notebook. For teaching me that falling apart isn't the end. It's just the messy middle before you put yourself back together stronger." Ethan joined her then, taking her hand. Together, they stood in silence, honoring the man who'd accidentally given Clara the greatest gift, the chance to rebuild herself from scratch. As they walked back to the car, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of meaning despite it. That afternoon, Clara's lawyer called with news. Silas had filed for bankruptcy. Grant Holdings was being liquidated. Everything he'd inherited from his grandfather was gone, sold off to pay debts that had compounded beyond repair. "Do you want me to pursue any action against him?" the lawyer asked. "Given the hotel acquisition, you might have grounds." "No," Clara said firmly. "Let it go. He's drowning in consequences of his own making. I don't need to hold his head underwater." After hanging up, Clara told Ethan about the call. He studied her face carefully. "No regrets. None. Revenge only feels good in theory. In practice, it just makes you tired." Clara leaned against him. "I'd rather spend my energy building than destroying. That's the difference between him and me." That evening, Clara received an unexpected visitor at the White Room. The concierge called up to say someone was asking to see her, wouldn't give a name, just said it was important. Clara found Lydia Moreau in the lobby, looking nothing like the sultry, confident woman who'd stolen someone else's groom. She was thinner, wearing clothes that were expensive but worn, her makeup not quite hiding the dark circles under her eyes. "I know I have no right to be here," Lydia said immediately. "I know you probably want me gone, but I need to say something to your face." Clara considered throwing her out. Would have been justified, but curiosity won. "You have 5 minutes." They sat in a quiet corner of the lobby, two women connected by one terrible day. "I'm leaving the city," Lydia began. "Starting over somewhere nobody knows my name or what I did. And before I go, I needed to tell you something." She met Clara's eyes. No seduction this time, just raw honesty. "You didn't lose anything when Silas chose me. You dodged a bullet. He's weak, selfish, incapable of loving anything except his own reflection. I know because I'm exactly the same way." Clara said nothing, just listened. "The difference between us is that you learned from your pain. You built something meaningful. I just kept destroying things, thinking chaos was the same as excitement." Lydia's voice cracked. "I'm in therapy now, trying to figure out why I hurt people for sport. My therapist thinks it's because I hate myself, so I make everyone else hate me too. Self-fulfilling prophecy or whatever." "Why are you telling me this?" Clara asked, not unkindly. "Because you deserve to hear that none of it was your fault. You were perfect, too perfect for either of us. We couldn't destroy you, so we tried to bring you down to our level. But you refused to stay there. You rose instead, and that makes you a better person than I'll ever be." Lydia stood to leave, but Clara stopped her. "Lydia, wait." Clara pulled a business card from her purse. "This is my therapist's number. She helped me survive when I wanted to disappear. Maybe she can help you too." Lydia stared at the card like it was a foreign object. "Why would you help me?" "Because holding on to hate is exhausting. And because everyone deserves a chance to become someone better than who they were." Clara stood, preparing to leave. "What you did was terrible, but you don't have to be that person forever. That's the whole point." Lydia took the card with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, Clara. I'm so sorry." "I know," Clara said simply. "Now go build something worth apologizing for." Clara had forgiven her enemies and found her peace. But would her newfound happiness survive the next unexpected twist? 6 months after the White Room opened, Clara and Ethan were featured in Forbes under the headline, "The Power Couple Redefining Luxury Hospitality." The article detailed their partnership, both romantic and professional. Whitfield Atelier had expanded to 12 properties across 3 countries. Ethan's investment firm had grown exponentially, partly from the success of backing Clara's vision. Together, they were building an empire that valued healing over hustle, meaning over money. But success had brought unexpected complications. Clara received calls daily from people wanting to interview her about the wedding disaster. Talk shows offered ridiculous money for her to tell all about Silas. Publishers wanted her to write a memoir titled "From Altar to Empire," or some equally exploitative phrase. She turned them all down. Her story wasn't for sale. What bothered her more were the messages from women who'd been through similar betrayals. Hundreds of them, sharing their own stories of public humiliation, private heartbreak, dreams that died in front of witnesses. They thanked her for showing that survival was possible, that rebuilding was an option, that destruction wasn't the end of the story. Those messages made Clara realize something important. Her pain had been private, but her healing could be public. Not in a sensationalized way, but in a meaningful one. She discussed it with Ethan over dinner one night in their shared apartment. They'd moved in together 3 months ago, a decision that felt both thrilling and terrifying in its normalcy. "What if I started a foundation?" Clara proposed. "For women who've lost everything, relationships, businesses, reputations. Help them rebuild, not just financially, but emotionally. Give them resources, mentorship, maybe even workspace in the White Room." Ethan set down his fork, his eyes bright. "That's brilliant. What would you call it?" Clara thought for a moment. "The Whitfield Initiative, in honor of my dad and everything he taught me about starting over." Within 3 months, the Whitfield Initiative was operational. Clara recruited therapists, business consultants, and career counselors. She offered microgrants to women starting businesses after divorce or public failure. She created a mentorship program pairing successful entrepreneurs with women rebuilding their lives. The first recipient was a woman named Maya, whose fiancé had left her at the altar, eerily similar to Clara's story. Maya had lost her job due to depression afterward and was living with her parents at 32, convinced her life was over. Clara met with her personally in the Phoenix suite. "I'm not going to lie to you," Clara said. "Rebuilding is harder than breaking. It takes longer, hurts more, and there are days you want to quit. But on the other side of that work is a version of yourself you never knew existed. And she's incredible." Maya cried, then laughed, then cried again. "How did you not become bitter?" "Who says I didn't?" Clara replied honestly. "I was bitter for a long time. But bitterness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Eventually, you realize you're only hurting yourself." 6 months later, Maya opened her own graphic design firm. She sent Clara a thank you card that read, "You didn't just give me money. You gave me permission to believe in myself again." Clara kept that card on her desk as a reminder of why she built this empire in the first place. Meanwhile, news of Silas Grant continued to circulate. He'd taken a job as a mid-level manager at a regional hotel chain, a dramatic fall from heir to a fortune. Clara heard through industry gossip that he was dating someone new, a kindergarten teacher who knew nothing about his past. Maybe he'd learned something. Maybe he'd changed. Or maybe he just found someone else to disappoint. Clara didn't care anymore. Silas had become a character in a story she'd finished writing. Her relationship with Ethan deepened in ways she'd never experienced before. There was no drama, no chaos, no wondering if he truly loved her. He showed up consistently, supported her vision without trying to control it, and loved her both on her best days and her worst ones. One Sunday morning, they were cooking breakfast together, a routine they developed where Ethan made omelets and Clara attempted to make anything involving bread with varying degrees of success. When Ethan said something that stopped her mid-whisk, "I bought a ring." Clara's heart did something complicated. "What?" "Not yet." Ethan clarified quickly, seeing her panic. "I'm not proposing right now, but I want you to know I'm planning to. When the time is right. When you're ready. I just needed you to know that this isn't casual for me. This is forever." Clara set down the whisk, flour dusting her hands. "Ethan, you don't have to answer," he said. "You don't even have to think about it yet. I just wanted to be honest. I love you, Clara. I want to spend the rest of my life building things with you. But I'll wait as long as you need." Clara walked over and kissed him, tasting coffee and possibility. "I love you too, and I'm not scared anymore. But I need time. Not because I don't know what I want, I do, but because I want to do this right. No rushing, no pressure. Just certainty. Take all the time you need," Ethan said. "I'm not going anywhere." That night, Clara stood on the terrace of their apartment, looking out at the city that had witnessed both her destruction and her resurrection. Somewhere below, the white room glowed like a beacon. Beyond it, women were rebuilding their lives with help from the Whitfield Initiative. Further still, her father rested in peace, knowing his daughter had finished what he started. And beside her, always beside her, was a man who'd loved her patiently while she learned to love herself again. This was what victory actually looked like. Not revenge, not even success in the traditional sense. Just peace, just purpose, just the quiet knowledge that she'd taken her worst moments and transformed them into meaning. Clara pulled out her phone and opened her notes app. She typed, 3 years ago, I thought my life was ending. Today, I understand it was just beginning. The difference between tragedy and triumph isn't what happens to you. It's what you choose to build from the wreckage. She saved it as a draft. Maybe someday she'd publish it. Maybe she'd share it with the world. Or maybe she'd just keep it as a private reminder that the best stories aren't about perfection. They're about persistence. Clara had built her empire and found her peace. But was she finally ready to risk her heart one more time? Spring came to the city like a promise being kept. The White Room celebrated its 2-year anniversary with a gala that made the opening night look modest. 300 guests, celebrities, politicians, industry leaders. Everyone wanted to be part of Clara Whitfield's story now that it had a happy ending. But Clara felt differently about this event. The first opening had been about proving something. This one was just about celebrating. She wore a dress the color of champagne, soft, elegant, confident without needing to shout. Ethan stood beside her in the receiving line, his presence as natural as breathing. They become one of those couples people pointed to as evidence that real love existed. 2 years, Ethan said, squeezing her hand. Can you believe it? Sometimes I still can't believe any of this is real, Clara admitted. I keep waiting to wake up back in that tiny apartment, still broken, still stuck. You're not stuck anymore. You're flying. The evening unfolded beautifully. The Whitfield Initiative announced they'd helped over 200 women start new businesses. Clara gave a speech about resilience that made several people cry. A string quartet played music that felt like hope sounded. During dinner, Clara noticed someone standing near the entrance to the ballroom. A woman around her age, dressed simply, watching the event with an expression Clara recognized. Hunger mixed with fear, hope mixed with despair. Clara excused herself and approached the woman. Can I help you? Clara asked gently. The woman startled. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be here. I'm not invited. She took a breath. My name is Rachel. My wedding was supposed to be next month, but my fiancé called it off last week. In front of all our friends at the rehearsal dinner. Everyone's been sending me articles about you, saying if Clara Whitfield could survive it, I could too. So I came here tonight just to see you. To see proof that life continues after everything falls apart. Clara's heart cracked open. She saw herself in this woman, the raw wound of fresh betrayal, the desperate need to believe that survival was possible. Come with me, Clara said, taking Rachel's hand. She led her through the ballroom, up the private elevator to the Phoenix suite. They sat on the terrace overlooking the city, and Clara poured them both tea. I'm going to tell you something nobody told me when I needed to hear it, Clara began. What happened to you wasn't about you. It was about him. His weakness, his fear, his inability to show up. You didn't fail. He did. Rachel sobbed, the kind of ugly crying that only happens when someone finally gives you permission to fall apart. But here's the hard truth, Clara continued. You're going to hurt for a while. You're going to feel humiliated and angry and convinced you'll never trust anyone again. That's normal. That's necessary. But don't live there. Don't build a house in that pain and call it home. How do I move forward? Rachel whispered. You choose yourself. Every single day, you wake up and decide that you're worth fighting for. You rebuild your life piece by piece until one morning you realize you're not just surviving anymore. You're actually living. Clara paused. And eventually, if you're lucky, you find someone who loves you not despite your scars, but because they prove how strong you are. Rachel looked out at the city lights. Did you ever see him again? The guy who left you? Once. He came to me desperate for money, and I helped him on my terms. But I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction. Just acknowledgement that he was a chapter I'd finished reading. That seems impossible right now. I know, but impossible things become possible with time and work. I promise. They talked for another hour. Clara shared resources from the Whitfield Initiative, gave Rachel her personal number, and made her promise to call if she needed anything. As Rachel left, she hugged Clara tightly. Thank you for showing me what's possible, Rachel said. After she left, Clara stood alone on the terrace, thinking about the ripple effects of pain and healing. Her betrayal had led to this moment. Her comfort Rachel, who would probably go on to help someone else someday. Destruction became construction, became connection. That was the whole cycle. Ethan found her there an hour later, the party winding down below. You disappeared, he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. I was helping someone. Clara leaned back into his warmth. A woman who's going through what I went through. And what did you tell her? That pain is temporary, but what you build from it can last forever. Ethan turned her to face him. The city lights created a halo behind him, and Clara thought, not for the first time, that he looked like someone who'd been sent to prove that good men actually existed. I love you, Clara Whitfield, Ethan said, his voice serious. And I know I said I bought a ring and would wait for the right moment. But standing here, in this place you built from ashes, watching you help someone else rebuild, I realize every moment with you is the right moment. He pulled out a small box from his pocket. Clara's breath caught. This isn't the proposal. Not yet, but I want you to have this. He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond. This was my grandmother's ring. She wore it for 63 years of marriage to a man who showed up for her every single day. I want that for us. Not the fairy tale version of love, but the real one. The one that survives bad days and good ones. The one that builds instead of breaks. Clara felt tears on her cheeks, happy ones this time. Ethan, I'm not asking you to marry me tonight. I'm asking if you believe in us enough to think about forever. Clara took the ring from the box and slid it onto her right hand. A promise ring, not an engagement ring. Not yet. But a visible commitment that she was ready to start thinking about futures instead of just surviving presents. I believe in us, she said. I believe in building something beautiful together. And when the time is right, when I'm completely ready, I'll move this ring to my left hand. And it will mean something different than what it would have meant 3 years ago. What will it mean? Clara smiled. It will mean I chose you not because I need you, but because I want you. It will mean I'm strong enough to be vulnerable again. It will mean love isn't about fairy tales. It's about showing up even when it's hard. They kissed under the stars, surrounded by the city Clara had conquered not through revenge, but through relentless self-reinvention. Below them, the white room glowed. Beyond it, the Whitfield Initiative continued helping women rebuild. Further still, her father rested knowing his daughter had exceeded every dream he'd had for her. And in Clara's heart, where betrayal used to live, there was now something infinitely more powerful. Peace, purpose, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you survived your own destruction and became someone worth knowing in the process. The story that began at an altar in humiliation ended on a terrace in triumph. Not because Clara destroyed her enemies, but because she built something better than revenge. She built herself, and that was the sweetest victory of all. Thank you for joining Clara's journey from heartbreak to healing. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of your own strength, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story of resilience and redemption. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. What chapter are you currently writing in your own life? We'd love to know. Until next time, remember, your worst moments don't define you. What you build from them does.